GM, KEP Posse. Hi, it's Kianga. Kianga Ellis Projects 25, the Rural Rapid Response Network, Tuesday weekly live stream. Every Tuesday, every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern. I come on here and I carry on for a little while. Today, I think we might need the entire 2 hours. So get comfortable, get your lunch organized if you don't have that already, or you can prop up your device somewhere, wherever, put in your ear pods, go for however you do lunch. You want to take this broadcast with you. And in case, you're not able to join us live right now, obviously there will be a recording that you can circle back to. So we're broadcasting right now on X and YouTube and Rumble. And so you can hang out with us any of those places. So I have a lot on my mind, and I feel like there needs to be a little bit of an icebreaker, a little bit of a warm up before we, just go there. And I do want to still do a little bit of an intro about what Young Gals Projects 25 is, the Rural Rapid Response Network, who am I, and what is citizen adjacent action? This thing we've been talking about now for, I think this is the fourth week. And who would have thought that I could make it past week 1? I wasn't sure. Some of you have seen me do little fits and starts with a live stream, or I guess the not so much a live stream, but more of the X spaces. I experimented with doing a Tuesday meeting on an X space just on my personal account, which is FHO Money, which stands for Future History of Money. That's my handle, my personal handle on X, where you can get all the madness real time most days of the week. And this channel at Kianga Ellis is dedicated to the Rural Response Network project and the live streams and little media clips that we'll clip and share so you can more quickly get the high points, the sound bites, the hot takes from each of the longer sessions. So before I talk to you all about what we're going to do today, I thought the nice icebreaker would be to share a little bit of what's on my desk. Now, if you've been on the broadcast before, I should start actually with what I'm wearing, because this was specifically chosen. I changed. I had on something else, and then I said, okay, no, I need to fashion accessorize the message that's going to come forth today. And so I hope this is showing, in the right, right side. But anyway, in case it's not, no pain, no Maine. No pain, no Maine. And that maybe that needs to be like an unofficial theme of this live stream, because the Rural Rapid Response Network is a project based in the state of Maine. It does have a regional scope. So what we're building, I'll just mention that briefly, and we'll of course talk a lot more about it as the hours go on. But what we're building here is a human network, a network of physical spaces, meet space, that will span from Maine, where I am on the coast, down east of Maine, really throughout the whole state, through Massachusetts. Oh, my dear Massachusetts, where I was born and raised, and into New York State, primarily upstate. Well, not the real upstate, but where I have roots and where I have a law practice, where my law practice is based, which is in the sort of Hudson Valley, central New York, Capital District, out west toward central New York and the northern Catskill Mountains. So the geographic scope of the Rural Rapid Response Network includes those states and kind of my nomadic stomping grounds, as it were. But we are definitely, I mean, it's probably fitting that, and it's funny because I posted something on X last week. The other theme for the year, more of a general theme for moi, is "Make America '80s Again." And as a Gen Xer, that's really a word, and that there's a lot to explore there, and I that's where this comes from, you know? This is an old people's, not the oldest people, it's not a boomer thing, but it's an older people's call to action from the era of, uh, exercise and fitness that went really crazy in the '80s, and that theme, which came to my mind the other day, I didn't even remember I had this T-shirt. No pain, no gain, referring to, yeah, physical fitness. And that has been in thank you, love the shirt, thank you, thanks for joining, thanks for commenting. Actually, I can show this. I can show the Metropolitan Global's, interaction with me. See, I'm very, very excited to have an interaction, so thank you. Um, yes, so as I zeeted the other day, and as I've been actually talking about on this live stream since we started, we're in for some pain. And I directed that comment toward the folks who are celebrating the election, celebrating the momentum, who are supporters of the America First agenda, which I am, and just wanted to highlight and ring the alarm to say that if we actually get what we want, if we actually do the thing that Republicans, conservatives have been talking about for generations, which is limited government, et cetera, it's gonna really hurt. It's going to hurt. And I've been saying this since before the inauguration, like since before the pain began to rain down on us, I was saying, hang on, guys, this is going to smart. This is gonna smart. And what it means is we're gonna have to step up. Like if we don't want rulers, if we don't want controllers, if we don't want, you know, federal powers, and we are believers in states' rights and we're federalists, we're not super ready to assume the throne as states, and even I would say within conservative politics in many of our states. And I am new to Maine, but I'm learning fast. I'm studying, I'm listening. And in fact, this whole live stream meeting up until now, has been very heavily focused on the listening tour and the learning tour. And we're always going to be in learning mode. But it was immediately clear to me that yeah, this agenda, this America First, which we like how a lot of it sounds, to get from here to there is going to take, quite a lot of pain. And this is where citizen adjacent action has to come in. This is where we have to rise to the occasion as ordinary people, where we have to do what we can with what we have. And we really have to look to new models of governance and government and civics and civic engagement that is not dependent on the existing infrastructure, the existing social infrastructure. Obviously, not the existing actual infrastructure, which is decrepit and crumbling and collapsing all around us. And I don't even need to give you examples about why that is true. So I thought, this T-shirt today, because I'm really kind of fired up, which I'll get into, and this is going to really underscore the mantra, the attitude, and this is why we need to make America 80s again. And this is why, as I also have been saying for many years, the Gen X is just gonna have to come in here and take over. Remember us? You know, we're that generation that, you know, you guys just put for the TV. Not you guys. Well, I don't know. I don't know who's watching, but you know, there were these older people who are our parents. And anyway, you know, you probably know about all the memes about Gen X because you know we've got a little bit of tailwind. I think we were really the deciding factor in the election. So, you know, people started to notice us a little bit and we feel that and we appreciate the attention. It's been a long time coming. So, yeah, so I want to start showing you my t-shirt, No Pain, No Maine, and that is going to be a theme. And maybe, you know, as this live stream goes on, I'll get a little more, you know, organized with like a proper consistent intro and all of that. So No Pain, No Maine, it's from the Make America 80s Again theme. And the next little thing I'll show you from my desk, which you all who've been on this meeting before have seen, my Jimmy Carter bobblehead doll. And this just helps me keep it light, you know? I mean, this helps keep it fun. And I got this bobblehead doll after the former president passed away. And it reminded me of 1980. I was 7 years old or 6. And it's one of my earliest memories, which was how much my class and I really wanted Ronald Reagan to win. I was like, how do I have this memory? How does a 6-year-old really care who is going to be the president? But that's how the 80s started. It started with that election, and it's one of my earliest memories. And I was reflecting that, well, why do I remember that? And why would a 6-year-old care? And my quick theory on this is that it was both the dawn of a new moment in mass media in terms of politics. And so there was the beginning of the popular culture that we saw Reagan, you know, really lead in the 80s and what boomed in the 80s in terms of mass media and pop culture. And of course, he was a movie star. So I think at some level that translated into an enthusiasm for his candidacy and his presidency that even I, at 6 years old, definitely not in a household that was supportive of Reagan and his presidencies, you know, in later years that I, you know, can remember when I was older, and certainly wouldn't have been the case in 1980. But yeah, so that's also on point. That's also on theme of Make America 80s Again, is my Jimmy Carter bobblehead doll. And it just reminds me of how absolutely ridiculous all these politicians are. Because I just look at him and I was like, yeah, no. You all do not, you all can no longer just keep calling the shots the way you have. So we have that. And what else? I don't want to take too much time with this, but I just want an icebreaker because it might get a little bit heavy. All right, I have my Caudalie beauty elixir for a smoothing, growing complexion because, oh my God, that felt really good. Because I'm in Maine and I need a wood stove and it gets therefore very hot and dry up here. So I need to have my water. And I have this from the Hudson Valley, from Kingston, New York. This is my water because I found out doing these live streams, this is my first time really, I mean, I've done a lot of social media for a long time, but actual live streaming, actually talking on video for 2 hours, it's like, I don't know how some of you all do it. Like my mouth gets dry, my lips get dry, so I have to have my water. The other thing I need to have is my hand cream, my Aesop's hand cream. For the same reason I need the mist, and the hands get dry and the lips get dry, and so I have my fresh advanced sugar lip therapy, so that's up here. I have my Luxe Optique, keep my glasses clean. And what else is here? I have business cards from contractors who don't call me back. at all, or email me back or anything. I have these little note cards that I got from Sabbath Lake Shaker Village here in Maine, which is still operating from like 17 something or other. It is the longest and only still currently active Shaker community. See that? And the Shakers are very, very important to me. That's going to be coming up as we talk. Look at that. This is gorgeous. As we get into some of the deeper historical references and examples, theories, historical precedents that we may want to draw from as we put together this network. And here's one other thing I'll show you. Little notebook from my school. My school in Boston, right? Yes. Okay, that's cool. So I want to show you all my bona fides as a New England person. And yeah, so I went to school in Boston. And I guess also I decided to wear this for one reason only, because I'm going to talk about some things and I'm going to push back on a lot of nonsense that I'm hearing. And although normally this is not supposed to be a space for political partisan banter, today it's necessary for me to just set a bit of a frame. And I wanted to wear my law school fleece because there are some people who seem to believe that unless you are credentialed in a certain way, your point of view has no validity and doesn't matter. That unless, you're part of a certain group, then you don't matter, or you don't know what you're talking about. So it's not really how I like to roll, but I thought for purposes of today's conversation, I would actually make it very clear that I went to law school, and I went to a pretty good one. Some of you may have heard of it. And what I'm going to have to say about some of the chit chat on the interwebs, I might know something about. I know something about what I'm talking about. I shouldn't have to, really flex like that, but I am going to do that today. And I also wanted there to be this. I'll give another summary in just a second about what is the Rural Rapid Response Network. I'll give a better summary. You're not enjoying my opening monologue. And I also wanted to wear, I'm breaking everything that I do online actually is very considered. It's very, very considered. So I thought, and I'm very into the arts as well, the visual arts. And so aesthetics and symbolism and all of that is something that really interests me, and optics and what have you. So you could take it to the bank that whatever, especially on X, I'm often very performative, right? I mean, it's not possible to really have a serious conversation on social media. I think we all understand that. And what this environment invites is something entirely different from what's possible to get at the truth of a matter. So we got to use everything at our disposal. So this juxtaposition is very intentional. The aesthetics of this t-shirt are very MAGA, probably, right? I mean, they're 80s. This is a font that to me evokes Rambo and and guns and army fatigues, probably, and no pain. So this has the whole aesthetic of a political movement that some in the media and some politicians want to continue to discredit and minimize and pretend like it didn't happen, or that it's not real, that it doesn't exist. And I wanted to bring these two logos, these two aesthetics together visually, along with my own presentation. I think is in itself, if a picture could speak 1,000 words, you can decide what you think these 1,000 words are. So that's a little bit about the outfit, a little bit about what's on my desk, a little bit of an icebreaker, and then I wanna get into what I will cover in this live stream. The Rural Rapid Response Network is, at this stage, a concept. It's a concept that really came to me at the very beginning of the year, although a lot of things that we talk about and that I have been doing were part of my planning for my work. As I mentioned, I'm an attorney and I'm very involved in decentralized finance and blockchain technology, governance for these decentralized computer protocols, software, as well as the regulatory realities of operating them and growing the adoption of this technology and the entire transformation of our global monetary banking and world economies, which is a thing that's occurring. And so that interest in that work that I do converged with me coming to Maine, moving to Maine full time, and taking a special interest in the infrastructure, energy, and economic development challenges that Maine is facing. And the Rural Rapid Response Network is my what can I do that's tangible? What can I do more than sit behind this screen and rage tweet or uh, just do nerdy computer work or just do brainy lawyer work, completely detached from reality, real people's lives. And I've decided that things that I'm doing in my volunteer life or my life of passion, things I'm doing in the arts, and what I had carved out for the year as time I want to spend devote toward the offshore wind debacle, uh, which thankfully seems like it's really has course corrected, although we still need to stay engaged with that. And we certainly, on a local level in Maine, need to be very active in our state legislative activities to really make sure we dismantle that scam that we have seen happening with offshore wind. And the network is envisioned to, as I think I've said, be this citizen-led, citizen-activated activity that will happen and be ongoing in good times, in bad times. Think of it as emergency response to local needs all the time. So we don't just want to wait till a crisis and then start figuring out where is this service, who's responsible for that, does everything work? Do we know what we're going to do in the event of XYZ PDQ? We are, with this effort, establishing a ready state, steady state, all the time network of people and spaces, town by town, who will take some extra time and take some extra accountability and responsibility to learn how towns function, their own towns, our own towns. What's going on? Who's on first? What are the challenges? What are the issues? We are just going to get really, really, really brilliantly smart about everything to do with our local governance. And we need this layer of citizenry that are active, who are not the elected officials, who are not the appointed people, who are not the paid consultants, who are not in the job. So that's a whole cottage of people and professionals. And what we've missed, what we've really missed, and what has fallen away is an engaged citizenry that is in it to, feed the lifeblood, the accountability, the oversight, the vitality that would keep corruption in check, that would make sure that what's happening around us matches our values and what we would want to have happen and what we've seen. And I'm not sure, I believe this is, yeah, I include myself in that category of people who were free riders, political free riders. Other people can spend the time, you know, going to town hall meetings and knowing how everything works, and I'm sure it's all fine. I can just go off and I can focus on, things to do with me and perhaps even, my own pet projects. Not to say that we've all been completely absent from community engagement or service, but when it comes to this sort of core of how our built environment where we live operates and who's protecting it and who have we delegated or resourced or tasked to be on top of things and to be managing things well. And to be honest, we've seen things get to a catastrophic level right now in this country. And so Rural Rapid Response Network is a personal response to that necessity, to the challenge as I see it, and a decision to just throw up a live stream and open kimono, document, share how I'm thinking through this, what I'm learning, and what I guess the plan needs to be there. It's at a very whiteboard stage, and you all are seeing real time the evolution of even my own thinking about how this should be structured, how it will be structured, that it does need to be structured, and that two things need to happen at once. This network needs to be active, up, going, running, live now. But also, planning is important and information is important. We want to be informed. We don't just want to be reactive and responsive, especially to information that's coming through this mediation. Information that's packaged and shown to us as a kind of Truman Show or, The Matrix, the spectacle. And I'm aware of a sense as I talk about making America 80s again. What's been going on in my mind is making America 60s again. There's something about the imagery and the language and the aesthetic of what we're supposed to understand as the grassroots that seems incredibly familiar. So familiar. Where have I seen that before? Where have I heard that before? And that's why it's powerful. Not that it's authentic, not that it's true, not that it's dominant, not that it's real, but that it's familiar. And we are getting played across the spectrum, I might add. There are forces beyond all of us that know more than we do about how our brains are now rewired, how we're being socially engineered every single day. And the AI and the generative AI is taking it to the next level. But I really have questions about its authenticity, which is also part of why Rural Rapid Response Network is very, very focused, is anchored in physical space. And it's about us making these connections to the people who are around us where we live, all the people, not just the ones we agree with, not just the ones who vote the way that we do or want what we want, but we are necessarily going to be serving all of the people. We all live together. Our fates are inextricably intertwined, which you can sometimes lose sight of if you're spending all of your time, you're getting all of your information from this screen. And so what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, I just simply don't believe it. I just don't believe it. And for those people, many in our country and many who are elected officials, part of the status quo, part of the mainstream media, part of the coastal elites and whomever, this class of people who think that they know better than everyone else, and they're just going to continue to control, manipulate, control, and lie. Yeah, we found out in November that the world is not so much the way that they think and the way that they keep trying to convince everyone is true, and they're pushing all of the emotional buttons. I was just, I watch a lot of live streams of political events happen, not even political events, but just the day-to-day activities in the nation, press conferences, briefings, uh, Senate testimony, all of that. I kind of I'm a nerd. Yeah, political science major, lawyer. I really love this stuff. And what I'm hearing is just not to be believed. I mean, it's just not serious. I don't believe, and I will say that I am of a certain generation now where I kind of know some of these people out here and have seen them and known them, some people, I'm not naming any names, over, a really long period of time, even before, they ran for office and or before they were elected, and I may have even possibly contributed to some people's first campaigns. And I don't know. I don't know what to think about what I'm hearing from incumbents, what I'm hearing from certain establishment people. But what I do say is that the fog of war is thick, and we do not see a vision for the future. We do not see anyone saying, okay, what has been, is not going to be what continues, what can continue. There'll be some acknowledgement of a problem, but of course, it always seems to depend on who's in power as to like which way, how you emphasize that, right? Whether or not things just need to be tweaked or whether or not things need to be blown up. I mean, it's such a circus, which is why bread and circuses, which is why it's like the Rural Rapid Response Network, generally speaking, is not going to be about that, because well, all of that, what is it that we say on the internet? We call it the simulation. While the simulation is going on, someone needs to do some real work. Somebody needs to be thinking about what comes next. What comes next after this moment where we just gonna just demo, just hollow out everything? Okay. Um, I am focused on achieving an outcome. I think I've been turned off of politics for so long because I just thought, it is this bread and circuses where people just want to do politics and do government. And this is why we're seeing such a blowback. This is at the heart of it is, yeah, no bureaucrats and government and the system that we have now, which is not to do with any particular political party. It's something that's a beast that's metastasized for generations in this nation and world. There's many, many other people who talk about this that are much more informed and eloquent about it than I am. But it's just no longer going to work to say, no, we're not changing anything. No, every single thing that we've built up, everything we've layered on and added. And I was posting earlier this morning about the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, CFPB, or whatever that is. Actually, I'm gonna pause on that because I want to show you. I'm gonna just share some of my posts because I think I need to get that more off my chest, and it's very, very relevant to. It's relevant in this session to spend a little bit of time on the politics, because while this is a partisan, nonpartisan, everybody is participating, everyone's welcome, and we're going to be very respectful, and we're focused on the needs, the physical needs of people and communities. if I don't talk a little bit about the politics, the political landscape, and certainly my perspective as the person out here trying to pull this thing together, uh, there's going to be missing from the equation, from the understanding exactly why we need to go about things a certain way with the Rural Rapid Response Network. So let's do that. That wasn't at all the plan. I was like, we're going to talk about my tweets, not my tweets, my zeets, and it's actually, I don't know, I think it's me getting very riled up, and it's the oven, the stove, it's being up here in the fridge, not the fridge, the attic, whatever, wherever I am, a hot place where normally it's so cold up here. This is such a weird, I've like never, I haven't been in a t-shirt only in so long, but for some reason that's happening. So, okay, what we're going to do, it's 1:36. So what we're going to do, and we're going to do it in this order. I'm going to play a few minutes of a meeting that happened yesterday. And we've been talking about this for the last 4 weeks. The Maine State Infrastructure Rebuilding and Resilience Commission has been meeting since last April or so. A new commission established by the governor, Janet Mills, in response to a series of catastrophic storms, in particular ones that were December 2023 and January 2024 that did an enormous amount of damage up and down the coast of Maine. And this commission released a report of recommendations to the state. Back in November, we are seeing new legislation introduced in the Maine state legislature in January to adopt some of those recommendations. So, been covering that report and going through it and for the past few weeks, and the learning from those meetings has been fantastic for myself. I've gone back and I've watched the meetings that occurred last year, and I've been attending the new ones that are happening right now as they prepare for a final report in May. So yesterday was a subcommittee meeting specifically about economic development. And there's just a few moments from that meeting that I wanted to share here. I live streamed the live stream just on my phone. So some of you watched it and found it to be helpful that I had live streamed the live stream. So meta. I mean, it was very bizarre. I'm like on my laptop, I'm watching a Zoom meeting. So I'm watching through one screen, people who are behind their screen, and then I put this phone in front of my screen and I live stream the live stream. See, it's not like this is not real. So I want to show that. And what's really the great tie-in is that these few minutes from that meeting were actually the commissioner uh, the co-chair of this infrastructure commission for the state, making some comments that were very, very interesting. I'm going to play them. And she refers in the meeting to, she's a head of economic development for the town of Stonington, which is adjacent to me. And last night, also, I went to, like physically, to the town hall meeting in Stonington, where they went over their town budget and all these preps for the annual town meeting. So I just want to, so that's something I'm doing. And I'm encouraging anyone who's interested in Rural Rapid Response Network, what you would be doing in your own zone, like where you live. You will be going to, first thing you're going to do is you're going to Google town of fill in the blank website. And how many of you have actually ever done that? Like gone to your town's website and checked it out. And what I found is there's tons going on, and there's been lots of reports, and there's strategic plans, and you can read those, and it's all very interesting. And so I'm starting to do that in my copious amount of free time. But this very, very important part of this project is, the public meetings, and especially the ones that I can physically get to. And obviously, certainly, this is being anchored where I am in my community. So, I mean, I'm dog fooding this whole thing. I'm doing the things that I'm saying we need to do as citizens, citizen adjacent action. This is it in action. You're going to be seeing it, and I'll be talking about it. So, I want to play for you those few minutes. And then I want to segue that. We're going to, at the end of this call, talk about the future. So that's going to be a big thing with us here is we're not just going to, we're not just going to do this, yelling and going on and getting trapped in the spectacle. We're actually going to spend more time thinking about the year 2050. And that's also why this is called KEP25, Keonga-Ellis Projects 25. It's not just that we're kicking off in the year 2025, but we want to work every single day with a 25-year timeline in mind. And when it comes to what we'll talk about at the end of the second half of the meeting, it's gonna take that long. It's not gonna take that long to matter. Like, it matters now. There are things we have to actually do now if we want the potential to be realized, if we want some of the opportunity to take hold. And this is the fun part. Like, this is where we get to have fun. This is where we get to feel good instead of depressed. This is where we see a light at the end of the tunnel. This is where our citizen adjacent action, being adjacent to the existing political process, working in parallel to the traditional modes of engagement, which to me, again, as I said, I'm very suspicious because they look strangely familiar. Like, did we do this 60 years ago? Did we do this 50 years ago? Are you really telling me that cadence that I'm hearing you pronounce from the podium, like, okay, that was very evocative in 1958. But the last time I checked, the civil rights cadence, I mean, just like, let's move on. Let's move on. So we want to move on, but we've got to conjure that vision for ourselves. We've got to think about the aesthetics of that. We've got to think about the language of that. We've got to think about the tangible, what is the thing? Like, what is the future that can work, that will work, that we ought to work toward? And in this meeting, in this project, it is around the areas of infrastructure, energy, and economic development. There's so many tremendously important things happening, but we just can't tackle everything, right? And I'm coming to this because of my own professional background, so that's why, and my interests. And also, I think beyond my own thinking about my own capabilities, I also feel very strongly that infrastructure is what, and energy, very closely tied, is the settlement system. It is the circulatory system for everything. Everything is finance. Everything is finance. Everything depends on finance. It's all about the money. It's all about our form of money, how the money circulates, how it's designed, how it's controlled, and even how the form it actually takes. I don't have any props for that. That's not a prop. I'll have to think of some props. We'll do another dedicated session on the future history of money, which is my tagline, my FHO money on X, and is coming from a blog that I started about 6 years ago. And it has to do with, falling down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, I don't know, 8 years ago or something like that. So that's very much going to be integrated into our model, whatever our ultimate entity model is or organizational structure. We're not doing the same old thing. We're not doing the same old whatever you want to call it. We are going to be Jetsons. We're in the future. I'm a futurist. I'm a cypher punk person. And uh, that's what's going to make this really, really fun. And I think that will give us a lot of legs because I don't hear anybody talking about that. I don't hear anyone talking about the future. Well, not anyone, but a niche, a subgroup. Uh, we've got to make it more real. We've got to make it tangible. And so hopefully this project also is a way to make the potential of things that are on the horizon for the future, how do we ground them? How do we take advantage of them? How do we participate in capturing the value where it needs to go, which is to us, which is to our communities, which is to the people who are the full faith and credit of any system of our nation, certainly. And so we're going to talk about some fun stuff in the second half of the meeting. So, okay. I love to monologue. But my throat gets dry. Okay. So, all right, 146. I'm going to play the video clip from yesterday's meeting first. And then I'm going to talk through very briefly one of my angry zeets from a couple hours ago. And then I want to show you something else. I want to share this podcast with you about the future. Okay. How's everybody doing? As I always say, everything is very lo-fi here in a way. As I said, I'm Gen X. I mean, I think I'm kind of very internet hip for my age. But all of these, oh wait, but I'm still quite clumsy with all this streaming stuff. Okay. Okay. All right, so bear with me. Every time I do this, I need to double check the visuals and make sure that I'm coming across and you can see me. And all right. So Linda Nelson, as I mentioned, is the co-chair of the Maine State Infrastructure Rebuilding and Resilience Commission. And this is a clip from yesterday's subcommittee live stream. And I just wanted to play her comments, these comments right here. So you can see that the images of me with my phone, like videotaping the Zoom, live streaming the Zoom meeting. So let's, actually, let me just give you a little bit of the context. Well, it's just been a presentation about the problems, the challenges having to do with economic development for the state of Maine. And if you're really interested, you can go to this Zeet, but after this live stream, I will repost this live stream of the meeting yesterday, and then down the track when they do publish the recording, I will also share that. So follow at Kianga Ellis, and you can get all the links. So they've been talking about that for, at this point, 36 minutes. So let's hear what Linda has to say, who's been doing a just really impressive, a very, very impressive job co-leading this commission. And she's otherwise just being based in Stonington, which is a very, very important economic center for working waterfront industries in the entire state. So she knows what she's talking about. Let's listen. Well, let's listen if I unmute. Okay. Let me pull this back.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, because we're all too small to be doing this on our own. So this regional capacity is good. I think these are all, I'm a big systems thinker. So unfortunately for me, this is all connected to much bigger issues. I mean, we have had a lot of Island Institute fellows here. We currently have a Maine service fellow. I mean, until we solve the housing issues and some of the budget issues, we can't keep people here. We can't attract more workers here. We can't get people that want to live here. So one of the things I'd be interested in from whoever is the right person is thinking about how we really leverage remote workers in a way that's meaningful. I think Judy was touching on this when she was saying, we need to think beyond the state boundaries, but how we connect remote workers in for some of this kind of planning stuff, it's as opposed to the construction stuff like that Jack does, right? The stuff that isn't hands-on in that way. How do we leverage more remote workers, and in turn, how do we better leverage the people that have moved here and are working remotely out of state? And how do we attract some of those people to our local work? We're having trouble competing, right? I mean, they can make a lot more working remotely for a corporation in New York than they can make working for the town of Stonington, needless to say. So, and some of our towns, I mean, we're lucky we have a town manager. Deer Isle has a town manager. A lot of our towns don't even have town managers, and those town managers tend to be really overwhelmed. And I can tell you, I'm hosting a meeting tonight in which, our selectmen are adamant about keeping no budget increases, right? So, in terms of adding staff or adding capacity, there's no appetite for it right now. So there's just a whole range of kind of larger issues that are keyed in here that we just need to think about in terms of the overall ecosystem of what our demographics are, who is here, why are they here, how do we keep them here, and how do we leverage some of the skills that we need to leverage. And I just want to say the Hancock County Planning Commission, the fact that that is revived is a huge good thing in our area in terms of regionalism.
Yep. Okay. So there was an elephant in the room, like a giant white elephant in the room in this meeting yesterday. And I get it. I mean, you're in a mode, and then this Donald Trump wrecking ball comes in and just, and people are in flight. They're in flight with what they've prepared. They're in flight with how they see the world and what they expect tomorrow. We have this confirmation bias. We kind of really expect tomorrow to be much like today or yesterday. And so what we didn't hear yesterday was a lot of recognition or acknowledgement that all of the frameworks and the structures that operate this state, they're in the crosshairs. I mean, there was like a few comments in an hour and a half where it was like, oh, maybe some of this funding will go away. But what really struck me was that it just seemed like they are operating and existing in a world that does not exist anymore. And it's not even going to be a question of, well, I mean, I guess you could take the opinion, and obviously a lot of people are right now, that everything's illegal, everything's unconstitutional that's happening. We've got all these judges, and that's the I'm going to show you in a minute. All these judges issuing injunctions and all of these calls for, resistance and in these impassioned speeches and signs in front of the Capitol and all this, all these theatrics. And we can see the behavior, and one example of it, and yesterday in that meeting, where from front to back, start to front, middle to end, all throughout is nothing but this: we don't have enough money for anything. We never had enough money for anything. we have a demographics problem. We have an infrastructure problem. No one wants to live in Maine. We have a housing problem. Yeah, it's just like it's raining failure. But, no one in the room wants to say that that maybe radical change is needed, or that just, you know, this thing that was passed around, which shows you Stonington's grant history, projects funded, grant total for 2007 to 2024, 13,470,501. And I want to talk about this because what's lost in the simulation, in the matrix, in all of the hype is the thing that you remember when you go to the town meeting, which is that people are not evil, they're not enemies. They're just servants. Especially, I mean, at our local towns, I think for the most part in rural America, we can get very, very excited about the big conversations and the broad sweeping I guess the attack mode that is, sometimes useful and is politically effective. But what's happening here, I mean, it's actually really very terrifying. Some of you, I'm sure, if you found this live stream, you're probably in the Pine Tree Patriots, and you are the reason I'm even doing this. So thank you. And there is this community that, yeah, I mean, everybody is just on fire, and everyone's in their own lane, and everyone's using what they have, doing what they can with the time that they have to make a difference, to get involved, to speak out. And it's really obviously encouraged me quite a bit. But I look at all of these things on the grants. I mean, I won't really read them, but this is important stuff. And the folks who are responsible for this 14 million, hooray. I applaud, I respect, and it's our greatest vulnerability right now. I mean, just on a practical level, right? Whatever your arguments are for whether DOGE is appropriate, whether the president's out of bounds, however you want that resolved, let's just deal in consequences of actions in the situation as we find it. And we also want to separate, right? We want to separate our feelings about the pain and we want to be realistic about the trajectory that we're on. And then it would just be nice to have some honesty, even just have a space of honesty that says, yeah, you know what? Like, this is a really terrible way to operate our municipalities. And you can hear that. I mean, people who are born and raised and breathe the air, drink the Kool-Aid of the status quo, and that we have NGOs and nonprofits running the most essential services. And we know that there's something very concerning going on with this vast web of these, I mean, well, we're finding out, right? But, yeah, nobody wants the senior citizens not to get their Meals on Wheels. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants our fire departments to collapse. No, nobody wants that. But we're very upset that, well, we've just come to the point that the status quo doesn't work. And it seems that you have incumbents or the status quo both saying that, like if you listen to the town meetings, but then because of this drama, this political drama, then they're also defending it, and they're like digging in their heels, and it's schizophrenic and it doesn't align. And there needs to be a group of people, and this is what I think citizen adjacent action looks like, where we have enough emotional self-control, we have enough I don't know what the qualities are. We're trying to figure that out in this meeting, but we're not going to get distracted from some of the things that actually need to happen to transform this country. And we are starting with where we live, because that's our physical realm. That's where we can observe and know what's true, versus we have to take everything that we see and we hear online, not even with a grain of salt. The way things can be manipulated, and now that we have AI running the loose, we absolutely have to add something else to the equation, which is what the Rural Rapid Response Network is. We have to add something to the equation that sensitizes us, sensitizes our hearts as well. We talked about, I read from the Bible last time, right? We talked about the story of the Good Samaritan and who's my neighbor. I mean, we have to include that. We have to include that. So there's a lot of rhetoric, there's a lot of demonization, there's a lot of extremes, there's a lot of really dark, dangerous, scary things going on all across the spectrum. And I am very well aware of that. And just because I don't necessarily tend to dwell on all of those things, doesn't mean that we're not aware of that. But we also are aware that we want to achieve something, and we don't just want to get swallowed up in the spectacle and be neutralized, because that's what the spectacle is for. So we're not going to be those people. And we know that these are things that our communities need. And currently they are funded by grants that are going away one way or another, and should go away, because this is, not only is it not sustainable, I mean, there's corruption. There's corruption, there are terrible incentives, and we want to have the maturity to say, we are going to unpack this. And as far as the politics go, and I think why you're seeing, if any of you don't understand what's happening, why you're seeing this sort of groundswell of like, I am also MAGA, because if we allow ourselves to remain divided on this piece of what's happening, or we're worried about that part or these nuances, again, we're just gonna, the good people of the nation are going to suffer. And I don't have all the answers, obviously, as to how to resolve all my feelings about a lot of the things, but I was like, this is my lane, I got to pick my lane, and I'm going to think about where we need to take action, and where we need to take a stand. And just, it's that bad right now. I mean, the moment is that serious that I'm live streaming to you right now. That tells you all you need to know about how serious the moment is. So that just sets the stage a little bit, giving you a little bit of real live, not just Kianga, talking as I want to do, but that I am making an effort to inform my opinion by taking my feet to the meat spaces and meeting the people who are doing the work, and not trying to remain measured and disciplined in my own views, and back up my opinions about what's true, what needs to happen, and most specifically what needs to happen with the Rural Response Network. That it's not just sort of driven by whatever, but that really at the end of the day, it's driven by what we see in our towns, and that we make an effort to be engaged and present, not just when we're angry, not just when we want to protest, because we can see right now how that's an unsustainable strategy, right? Because then we're just going to keep this ping pong, where it's like, if I'm in the lead or on the majority, then I'm happy and I don't speak. And then, the other opponents to your views, then they are the underdog, and then they get passionate and mad, and then they get all the oxygen in the room, and then the pendulum swings back, and we just have this ping pong. That is just a recipe for failure. So we need to be this new kind of citizen adjacent action layer in society that's always engaged, that always is vocal, where we can earn some reputation as well as being fair, as being reasonable, to have credibility, to give as well as what we want to receive, right? Not just show up to blow people up and do those things that the algorithm rewards, but that we are going to give credit where credit is due. We're going to give grace, and we are there to be constructive. And, that is the essence of, I think, what's going to get us through this moment, because, we need each other. We need each other. We need to figure this out. This is a very big book from a professor at the Yale Law School who I didn't have him as a constitutional law professor, Akhil Amar, but he's very famous in certain circles, and I aspire to read this and revisit things that I have. This is America's Constitutional Conversation, 1760-1840. So with that, let me just spend just a quick few more minutes on the world according to Kiaga Ellis. Which is going to be the segue. Oops, hang on. I gotta check that I've not messed this up. Which is going to be the segue to the future. We're going to be talking about the future. And I promise, unless you really want me to, we're not going to talk about the framers and the Constitution and all that boring stuff. But I think we are going to have to get into it. Wait a minute. Oh, no. I want to show you all. I just want to talk about, isn't this so meta? This is like I'm sharing a live stream of me live streaming. I love it. I want to share my rant. I want to give it some color. Did you know? Is this the one? Okay, let me just read these two. Because it is, believe me, it's relevant. It's relevant to the future. All right. So I was catching up on some of the I guess what some people have been saying. And I heard Senator Warren, so dangerous, so contrived, so insincere. And I listened to her make this outrageous claim that people in the administration, the administrative branch, the executive branch, I should say the administrative function, the executive branch, that they ought to listen to a judge that tells them to disregard and disobey what President Trump is saying. I mean, the whole implication is it's like it's mutiny. It's like I don't know if it's treason. I don't know what. This is also why I need to read this book. So I got to get crisp. But it's wrong what she's promoting. I mean, it is wrong, and that's why. Where is it? That's why I came on here today with my Yale Law School crest, which it's so gross to do, but I just am here to tell you she is lying to you. And it really upsets me because this is the group of people that were telling the world not to elect Trump, or telling the citizens and telling the world that, all these things that Trump wants to do and who he is. And what they're actually talking about is just because they don't like who's in office. Then what I'm seeing from the Democrats, and this is not me being partisan. This is me just being me and knowing a tiny little bit about the law in our Constitution. Like, there are co-equal branches of government. Oh, I should read this. I said I was gonna read this. Senator Warren is the most dangerous person in America. Oh, so you think the judiciary is the ruler of this nation. So she would like to put the judges, she would like to make the judges like kings. We don't have kings. We fought a revolution. They wanted to make George Washington king, and he said, no, thank you. No, we don't have kings. We do have a president. We do have an executive. We do have an executive function, but we have co-equal branches of government. We have the executive function, we have the judiciary, and we have the legislature. And some people are lying when they say that nothing matters, like as if the president, as if the executive that created an agency, for example, with executive order that's never been codified by the legislature, that same executive function suddenly doesn't have the authority to modify that executive order, for example. Or that, and this is the messaging, you could just ignore laws with impunity because you don't like who's in power and you don't like what they're doing. And what I said, and maybe this was a bridge too far, but what I said in my Zeke was, what's happening, and this is what upsets me because it's so dishonest, and we're going to miss the work we need to do. And we're at great risk, all of us, if we let both sides do this. And we don't, as citizens, inform ourselves and also create a little bit of space where we're going to like, okay, we're going to watch the spectacle. We're going to watch the bread and circuses because that is the tail that wags the dog. It's very powerful. We can't just ignore the arena. Like, we have to be in the arena. But if we're not also out of the arena and in meat space and in soil and in our town meetings, I'm telling you, we're not going to make it. Like, if you go to the town meetings, it's very scary. Like the thin thread. You won't be surprised at what happened in North Carolina. You won't be surprised at what happened in LA. You won't be surprised what happened in East Palestine and Detroit, what's been happening. I mean, every single corner of this nation. You won't be surprised when you start paying attention at the grassroots level. And in Maine, our demographics, it is terrifying. So it upsets me when I see this manipulation that's going on and these lies. And that's why I say it as a nonpartisan person, because it's so I can see the twisting for purposes of showmanship and holding on to power and distraction. And we're going to suffer. Even if you are emotionally aligned, if you're the pain, yes. But if we're not careful, these people are going to lead us off a cliff. I'm including everyone in office right now. We need to have a check on everything that everyone is saying and everyone is doing. And we may align politically because we need to get stuff done, but we're going to continue to pay attention and think for ourselves as to what is true. And specifically right now, where we're going to see a lot of action in the courts. Trump is, he's had some very smart people working on this for a long time. Like, they're not dumb, and they have thought this through. So, don't get seduced by the Elizabeth Warrens who are trying to tell people that you listen to what the judge tells you to do. When we know that our entire government is like so corrupted. Period, full stop. So I refer to this in my post as lawlessness. You guys have your arguments as to what the Trump administration is doing is lawless, but I probably disagree, and there's some things that are going to have to be tested in the court because the people who put this together, they're just, they're very smart and they've been very creative and they've been thinking for a long period of time. And there's probably interpretations and questions that are going to have to go to the Supreme Court. But just because a politician or group of people entrenched who benefit from the status quo are going to wave their hands and just, get the Martin Luther King, intonation in their voice as they stand in front of the Capitol, which is supposed to do what? I don't know. Like, okay, we'll just bow to everything you're saying. You must be righteous because that reminds me of the 1960s. Like, no, no, this is freaking dangerous. And somebody has got to say, someone's got to create a space where we can like acknowledge, all right, maybe things have gone a little bit off the rails. How can we talk about this? How can we talk about this? Because we have seen, it's just an escalation at this point, an escalation. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, I don't think Donald Trump has any limits. So, I mean, I'm not entirely comfortable with where this is going, but that I direct that at both sides, right? And which is also why, the Rural Rapid Response Network needs to exist right now, because we just have to have our own plan. People like you and me, we need our own plan, because this thing is just, it's getting really rough. It's getting rough. Everyone's playing the ultimate hardball. These people will take us there. These people will take us where we don't want to go. Where we don't want to go. All right, here's this other thing that I said about, oh my God, you guys, what is coming over me? I'm hot, I'm sweating. Whew, I need to calm down. Okay. Whoa, okay. Here's what I said. Here's another thing I see happening that I think is, look, I get it. It's politics. But it's not okay. Because it's going to take us to a very bad place where we don't want to go. Some people want to go there. I don't want to go there. You don't want to go there. We do not want to go there. So I wrote earlier, again, this is all about this. No pain, no gain. It's about a narrative. Like we're missing a narrative in the conversation that acknowledges both sides. And if we can't find that discourse, it's not going to go in a good place. So we need, I think, from both sides, a little bit more acknowledgement, or for those of us who like the accountability that we're seeing, who want the transparency, and we will accept some of the hair that's around that situation, because the situation is that dire. But I said, yeah, okay, I wish I had the time and the reach to explode the mythology porn going on around the CFPB, Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. So here's what we have. What happens? We have a lot of euphemisms. We have language. We have programs that have been built up over time that sound very benevolent. And both the way they're named and how they're talked about, it's like, it's Gandhi. I mean, it's Mother Teresa. It's Jesus. Like, how could you be against this? It does these things. And in the speed of the internet and the way our culture is and the way politics are right now, you can only communicate. I mean, you just can't communicate context. You certainly can't communicate history. And the reaction just takes off like a wildfire. And it just burns through everything. And we don't end up in the right place. So I was just sharing that, this agency is new. It just, I mean, new since 2008 or 9. It came out of the financial crisis. Have you seen anyone talk about, I mean, maybe they have, because I mean, I don't necessarily follow a lot of the major, yeah, I can't see everything, but I feel like it hasn't been brought up, linking this agency to the fact that it was, what we've seen after 9/11. This omnibus giant, and I won't even say overreaction, but a power grab in a moment of crisis where the population is weak, political will allows the blob, the bureaucracy, to do whatever they want and cloak it in these benevolent terms, when really what was happening then is what's happening now. It's like a, let them eat cake moment. Those in power are worried about their own heads, and they don't want us to come for their heads. And so you get all this stuff passed that, on the one hand, this will never happen ever again, what happened to 2008, because we're going to add all these regulations and all this stuff. And, it's just a game. It's just a game. It's just a terrible, terrible game. And so again, as I said at the top of that tweet, it's like I don't have the language, I don't have the time, I don't have the reach, like, how to express why it's so deceptive. And what the advantages are, why we can't have a real conversation about reforming government. And so, it's like I throw up my hands, like, then I just shit post on social media, and I grasp my head, and I like, I spray water on my face, and I hang out with the Jimmy Carter bobblehead doll, and I think about the future, because otherwise I'll just be too unhappy. So I think that basically the whole summary of all of that, everything I've been going on about, this huge rabbit trail, this whole entire meeting was one big rabbit trail, because no pain, no gain is something we as citizens have to take to heart right now, apart from the town meetings, apart from calling our representatives, emailing them, tweeting at them, which we should do. But, like, apart from all of that, are we ready to take responsibility? Are we ready to do more than the social media outrage? Are we ready, those of us who are able, because not everyone is able, not everyone has the time or the personal situation or what have you to go to the town meetings, but there's more of us who are able than who are currently doing it. So are we going to stand in the gap? Are we going to stand in the gap? Because I'll tell you that, now speaking of Maine, because I'm only going to speak about what I am observing firsthand. I'm hearing about things, I'm learning more, but I will just base this next comment on what I am seeing with my own little two beady eyes. And what I hear on these commission live streams, the people in the organizations and in these infrastructure, the social, the capital, the intellectual constructs, the methods, the modes, if it goes away, it's Mad Max. I mean, if it goes away overnight, which is, of course, what sort of looks like it's happening, and it's what everyone's protesting, and so believe me, I mean, I don't not get it. So I'll speak to patriots and conservatives and MAGA. Do we, as people who are not for the status quo, who want radical reform. Do we understand the rug we are pulling out from under our own feet? I don't think so. I don't think so. And it's really frightening. It's really sobering. It's really sobering. Either way we go from here is very sobering. So, what do we do? So, we take citizen adjacent action. I'm launching a rural rapid response network. Don't ask me what it is. It's unfolding in front of your very eyes. And it's gotta be about just how we are actually us gonna hold it down today, tomorrow, and into the future. But as part of that, we have to also engage in the thinking about what's coming next. We have to be participants in that because, we're potentially, since we're not elected, we're not appointed, it's not our profession and job, emergency management, all that stuff, all the civics, all the government, all the operations stuff, like all the governance. We're specifically not in an official seat. Like that's very, very, very important. So we have the distance. We are going to bring back accountability. We are also going to bring back support because that's, from the perspective of those of us who feel things have been co-opted, corrupted, we've just seen this terrible theft and extraction and manipulation that's just taken over our lives and made our communities unrecognizable to us. And just because, we didn't get the airtime or we were, silenced, either socially censored or we were deplatformed or we were just terrified to speak our truth, like however invisible the majority has been up until now, the majority of us are suffering under what's been built up over a few generations. And there has to be a civics layer of citizen adjacent action that we're going to take the pain, we're going to take the brain damage of sitting on the live streams, of going to the town meetings, but being a positive presence there, having something to offer, helping those who have held the mantle, whether we like it or not. They are operating all the things. So, we need to also figure out how to be cooperative with what's in flight. Because, I don't want to be graphic, but we saw the planes come out of the sky, the other week. And that's unfortunately a pretty good picture of, I think, where we all are. And it doesn't matter if you're rich and famous in LA or invisible to most of the world in rural America. So that's why we have to do what we're doing. That's why we will both, make the time to go and show up, be visible, be constructive, begin to put our positive energy into service, which I think right now just looks like figuring out just WTF is even going on, like who does what and how do things even, like what's even happening. That feels like a pretty steep learning curve for myself. And as fast as I want to move on things, yesterday also just reminded me how fast I really just can't move, because there's just certain things that you have to absorb by osmosis, that you have to learn. There's a certain humility, certainly, that I need to proceed with, and a teachable spirit. But within all of that, what's going to keep us encouraged, what's going to keep us going, what's going to help us come to situations with a positive attitude is because we see hope, we see a vision, we see where this could go, and it's freaking awesome. It's awesome. So that's what's next. Is I want to share with you all, and we're at 2:30. So this podcast that I want to share is from the world. Let me tee it up. Actually, I'll share my screen. What's everybody doing? How are you doing? You got to take social media Sabbaths. You got to take breaks, like long breaks, because short breaks, your mind is still like, your nervous system is still. So you need to, like, however long you think you need a break, you need to double that, because you didn't really rest until after, you could like calm down, after your subconscious is like stops being hyperstimulated. So we need to take breaks. And that's the advantage of being rural, is it really can help us in this battle, because the air, the fresh air, the nature, the soil is like absolutely has to be part of the arsenal. Absolutely part of the arsenal. Okay. After all of that, let me see how this is coming across. All right, after all of that, we are going to take a journey into the future. Now, some of you know I'm involved in blockchain, Web3, cryptocurrency, decentralized finance, and there's the newest sub industry within all of that that's called DePIN, which is, I think, stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Networks. And what is so great, finally, is beginning to see how the magic internet money and all of the stuff that gets a bad rap, and a lot of things, aspects of which are very unfortunate, that are happening right now, but where the rubber can meet the road, where we can bring it into a conversation that's about our local economies, about labor, about the worker, about economic development, all the brick walls we keep running into in every conversation about resilience, infrastructure, energy, the future, finance. There seems to be no answer. There seems to be no hope. And there's not a ton happening in the digital asset space right now that I feel like I want to really share in the context of the Rural Rapid Response Network. And I've talked about it a little bit. I've sort of bookmarked that. I think there's maybe something we can look at on a 25-year time horizon. This is not for now. Don't get involved as a retail investor. Still a lot of issues. We still need regulation and laws and market structure. But I saw this podcast, and I've had in my peripheral vision, like wanting to keep track of DePIN, and particularly what Tej is doing. You're gonna hear from him and his company. are going to talk about scaling niche labor and particularly drone operator networks. And this is incredibly exciting, particularly for a state like Maine. And Linda's remarks about how are we going to attract new workers. Our entire emergency response in Maine, like we don't even have the demographic age-wise of able-bodied people to even do emergency response. Like we don't even have the contractors to do the repairs. It's so dire. And so, something like this new industry, these new technologies, these new markets that are coming, it's not coming tomorrow, but we get a hold of what they're working on, these super nerds, and we don't look only to the past for our prosperity and our hope. I get the slogan MAGA, make America great again, but there's something in the future that we've never seen and we've never had that we actually really want to be moving toward. And so this conversation, it's there, and I'll share. I think we'll post the link so you can really watch it, because it's not probably super user friendly if you're not in these industries, but I hope that just listening to let's listen to about 10 minutes. Let's listen to about 10 minutes of it, and you can at least just get the spark, right? To get the spark, because the thing that we can do now, it's got to be about policy and then regulations. So if we don't spend our time now in the future, thinking about the future, imagining the future, like even drawing it, like even, really tripping out about what it could look like, that we can't get there because there's a predicate that is years, takes years. I found this, as far as offshore wind is concerned, it seemed like this happened all of a sudden. I'm seeing that the Gulf of Maine is being auctioned. I see that the officials are in Norway and Europe on a boondoggle, the governor and whoever else. And I'm like, wait, what's happening? How did this happen? And then, I think it started in 2019. It's unbelievable what has been achieved in just 4 years in one administration, and how so much stuff just like came out of nowhere. But it didn't come out of nowhere. It started somewhere. And so whatever we want to see, we have to start now. And so that is with policy, that is with the work that's going to be forced upon us right now. So it's incumbent upon us to get on top of a vision, to get on top of some of these new industries of the future. And then what is most important to understand about whether it's Bitcoin, DeFi, crypto, are not the things that you're even hearing from the White House, I'll be honest, unfortunately. The real work, what people are actually building, and the folks that I most admire in the space, you don't hear from them because they are like their heads down, doing something, believing in something, working on something that's going to have value for everyone's lives, that's going to be there when, if we can hold all of this together just a little bit longer with band-aids, and I don't even know, like the grace of God, then the world as we know it, that seems so dark and impossible and like at dead ends, and the only hope is to go back to some fantasy or go back to some Disney-fied version of a civil rights march, or some Leave It to Beaver, Hollywood. All of it is Hollywood. None of it is the American ridiculous. It's the spectacle. Like, it's very motivating, it's very inspiring, but it's not exactly real. And so we have something that we can do now instead of thinking that all of our hope is in images from the past. We can take a little bit of time, check out what these nerds are doing, and find that it's not all Ponzi schemes and pump and dumps and greed and disgusting scams. That alongside of that, within that, is something that is actor neutral, that is just technology, just a tool, just a pen. I can use it to write a love letter, or I could use it to curse you out. Like, it just all depends on who it is and how you're using that instrument. And so, enough of an intro on that. Let's listen. Let's listen to this.
Awesome. Super exciting high level thoughts, TH. I think it's probably a good time to zoom in on what you've been working on over at RAD. You mentioned drone tech, but maybe telling our audience a little bit more about what you're building and why it's so well suited for the deep in space.
Sure. So first, dwelling on drones for a moment, I think this year may very well be kind of the year of robotics and drones. A lot of people have this notion of drones as a defense tool, but drones are only a defense tool because they're a really powerful kind of platform for observing and navigating the real world. In the US right now, there are millions of drone pilots, and roughly 500,000 of those pilots are commercially licensed. That means they're skilled operators and they have the ability to sell the deliverables from their drone, the images, the video, the models, and get paid for that. So you have this kind of really big underutilized supply base. So what we're doing at RAD is we're building the world's most cost-effective, just-in-time drone observation platform. For us, there is this kind of abyss in Earth observation, really just monitoring infrastructure and groundly activities between satellite and manual observation on the ground. And we think ultimately that white space gets filled in by a scalable drone coordination platform. So as mentioned, there's about 2 million drone pilots in the US, a quarter of those are commercially licensed. Our mission at RAD is to mobilize and reward that underutilized observation base, growing supplier base and slashing costs of observing the real world by orders of magnitude. And for us, we look out there and there is precedent for sort of drone services networks that allow pilots to go find jobs across construction, agriculture, real estate, et cetera. But in general, pilots who participate in these networks feel overlooked and underpaid. They feel you get this feedback from folks on Fiverr, they feel like a commodity, right? And ultimately, if you look out there, these are skilled operators of machines. And our take at RAD is pilots are in fact the core assets of these networks, not only how well distributed they are throughout the real world, but also their unique skill sets and the unique hardware they bring to the table. And so what we're doing is we're flipping the playbook of the kind of traditional drone services networks and building the first pilot-owned drone network the world has seen.
Super exciting. I think strong understanding of the supply side of the network from that introduction. Maybe could you dig in a little bit more to the demand side of the network? So who might be paying for these services? How do you unify the supply of drone pilots and hardwares to provide a valuable service to end customers? I would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so I think on the demand side, the applications are really endless. When consumer drones kind of came on the market in, the early 2010s, people used them for shooting weddings, sometimes real estate, but things have really gotten crazy now. So drones are being used for centimeter level accurate topographical surveys. They're being used for construction monitoring. They're being used for pest and agriculture health on farms. We have upwards of 20 commercial applications, telecoms, monitoring oil and gas facilities. The list kind of goes on. These are just eyes in the sky that have resolution or optical capabilities better than the human eye that can be used to monitor any piece of physical infrastructure. So in our case, what we're focused on right now, what we think is the lowest hanging fruit, is primarily applications around insurance, construction, and real estate. So in the insurance space, right, you can imagine, especially living here in Florida, when a catastrophe rolls through, there's a whole bunch of uncertainty. Insurers are expecting claims to roll in. They got to send people up on roofs. It's expensive, it's slow, it's a mess. What you want to be able to do is monitor your portfolio of insured assets very quickly. And what you need for that is drone pilots with licenses in place near your assets with a way to go find those assets and manage them. Construction progress monitoring is pretty huge. You have these 2, 5, 10-year projects, and every week for compliance purposes or progress purposes, you need to monitor that property. Drones are perfectly equipped to deliver that. I don't think we need to go too deeply into the real estate applications, whether it's for marketing purposes or otherwise. Drones give you a 15-minute solution, really immersive views of a property, piece of vacant land, topographical characteristics, etc. What I'm most excited about is, just as 5 years ago, we had no idea that this breadth of applications would emerge, some of our pilots are using drones for very creative use cases. And I think in 5 years, the demand side will be even bigger.
Each playing devil's advocate, you've described sort of two things that the supply side does here. One, they own the hardware, so they bring the hardware to the job. And two, there's a skill being a pilot. Over time, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, did the drones just get so smart that the skilled part of being a pilot diminishes in importance? Or maybe you could talk a little bit more about like just how skilled you need to be a really good pilot here.
Yeah, so I think a lot of this comes down to regulation. A lot of the autonomous routing of drones is now pretty good, in a similar sort of spot to FSD for driving. But the FAA has certain restrictions around drones being able to fly beyond visual line of sight. And so for some time, not only will pilots be required for having eyes and control of the drone, but also for some time, there are applications where a pilot's skill on the sticks is still very, very important, right? These are denser areas where you're flying indoors, you're flying around trees, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think over time, and what we'd like to support is both those applications that require pilots on the sticks, not only from a regulatory perspective, but from a skill perspective, and those pilots who are really more interested in making money. They could care less if they're on the sticks or if they're driving to the location, putting their birds up. I think today, something that is maybe misunderstood about drone applications is you can sort of build a standardized solution where a drone is going up, following a predictable flight route. But there are a ton of high value applications, from construction to oil and gas, where pilots on the sticks will be required for some time. And some of these skilled operators are making really good money.
Can you give us a sense of these 500,000 commercially licensed pilots? I assume they're, sort of.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. And just want to share some comments by way of wrapping up for the day. So what's really remarkable about even just that little clip that I shared, that we watched together, is everything that I've been hearing about and reading about in the Infrastructure Resilience Commission reports, interim reports, meetings, all the conversations about what the problems are in Maine, what the solutions need to be. I played a little bit of what Linda was saying in that meeting yesterday, and talking about remote workers and just needing to attract a new labor force. And yeah, it just strikes me, and I hope it is clear to you all watching that, like, oh, this is some thinking, and I didn't even share with you what's unique about the particular network and how that economy works, this decentralized labor model, and how that is powered through a token and token economies. That's a little bit of inside baseball, and that's a little too nerdy for today. But at a high level, I wanted to just share this glimpse of things that are happening, that exist today, that we don't hear about, that our politicians are not talking about, and that Maine has a huge opportunity. And in fact, perhaps some of the things that have gone so wrong for so long can be an advantage for us. And again, you heard Tej talk about regulation. I don't know anything about drones and drone regulation, but what I heard was there's something that could be going, everything's on the table right now. I mean, that's the point of thinking about the future right now, is that as everything is being ripped up and restructured, we better have a plan. Like, the people with a plan, I think there's going to be tons of opportunity as anything with climate change or Green New Deal is going to, whether or not it's doing well or doing good, the framing of it. Then now this is again a nonpartisan statement. This is just a statement of fact that the way we have approached infrastructure, solving our energy problems, solving our labor problems, solving our demographic problems. I'm not even going to discuss what those policies have been to solve those problems. If we can get a hold of what some of the smartest people in the world, are thinking about, and it doesn't have to be, we don't have to talk about immigration and visas. But maybe, if we are thinking about and if we engage some of these technologists and some of these builders and entrepreneurs and talk about the resources in Maine, talk about the spirit of Maine, the people of Maine, the landscape, and the needs, because these reports, you talk about infrastructure, energy, oil and gas. I mean, I think we have the demand side in terms of some of those use cases, some of those commercial applications that we heard about. And then if there's this new model that's going to bring commercial operators into a kind of network that fundamentally changes the economics of doing that work, making it possible for more people to be trained. I mean, watch the whole podcast because it just really gets into all of the areas that can give us a picture on like the local citizen level where, yeah, we're going to stand up this network. Yeah, we want to be engaged. We want to learn, but we also want to have something to offer the conversation. We want to have something to offer as things are getting shut down. And if we're in the no pain, no Maine camp, let's just, that just can't be all that we have to say, right? We just can't be like, oh, so what? Take the pain. Like, and then what? So if we can come armed with the, we got to take a little pain, but there's going to be gain. But are we armed with like what the gain is? Like, are we armed with the information, the proposals, the policy, the actual argument for maybe why we need to change how the FAA is looking at drone operations? If all they're thinking about is security, if the policymakers aren't even aware of a potential economic engine that's going to address our demographic needs, our skilled, economic opportunities for workers so that they want to come here so they can afford to live. There's just all the things that are, fire issues that are on fire that seem like they have no answer. I just wanted to share with you in this meeting in the context of citizen adjacent action and rural rapid response network, one example of something that I have been keeping an eye on. And now since this podcast dropped, I'm feeling like, okay, so maybe things are progressing over there in that industry in DPIN and what Rad Labs is doing, that it's worth a little bit more focus and kind of putting it on the agenda in terms of stuff to study and talk about and share with all of you who are, maybe not in those industries, but who are very engaged locally and in really seeing a new policy focus and new leadership in Maine. These are the kind of things we can talk about to say we have a vision, we have a plan. It's something you've never heard of before, but it actually checks all the boxes, and so we don't have to fight anymore. Right? Problem solved. Oh. And it only took me 1 hour and 53 minutes. Problem solved. So, so that's it. That's a wrap. Keon Gettles Projects 25, the Rural Rapid Response Network. Citizen adjacent action. What can we do with what we have without dependencies on single points of failure or things that are temporary, fragile, or that are going away? And who's our neighbor? We talked about that. We talked about what does it look like to care for our neighbor, being noticing when someone has a need, providing for that need. And we found a little fun, like little finance piece where the Good Samaritan operated as a guarantor, as a surety. He's like paid for the neighbor who'd been a man who fell among thieves. We said that, oh, that sounds familiar. This poor chap who fell among thieves and got beaten within an inch of his life. And then the priest came by and like crossed the street. It's like, I don't see you. So we're going to be good Samaritans in the fullness. That's going to animate everything that we do here. And doesn't matter who is the person that fell among thieves in the Rural Rapid Response Network. We are going to be interested in taking care of the needs of our neighbors and ourselves, for ourselves, without these dependencies that have gotten us into all of this trouble. But we're going to be constructive, and so we're going to be thinking about the future. We're going to be thinking about 2020. We're going to think about 2050, 25 years in the future, and then we're going to have to work backwards, because if 2050 is going to look anything like what any of us would hope for ourselves or the next generations, we actually have to think about that right now, and we can take advantage of this absolute terror and chaotic and frightening moment and all the pain to, hey, follow Trump's lead. Just say some crazy out of the box things and see what sticks. Right? Maybe that's a way of getting things done. We'll see. Until Thursday. Oh, actually, so Thursday we will be back here, same time, same place. Because I think there's going to be a big snowstorm. I'm not going to be able to get to Augusta, unfortunately. So we'll be back here 1 o'clock Thursday. Bye-bye.